Good evening, Britannia, and hello to the rest of the world. Welcome to 2CTV, your global news channel. Today has been rough when it comes to all the updates that we've been getting from the Middle East. The mainstream media have once again become the propaganda mouthpiece for Hamas in Gaza. But in this video, in this live stream, we're going to be unpacking everything that's happened over the last few hours and try to be reasonable about everything that's been reported and the difference between something that's reported and something that's been already obviously debunked or something that's been confirmed. Now, it all goes back to, number one, the hostages update. Number two, the situation with the negotiations in general. And number three, what's actually happening in Gaza. We have some updates on that as well. First things first, we heard some very distressing news updates about the Bibas family earlier today. Hamas in Gaza claimed and reported that the remaining, obviously, members of the family, the mother and the two babies, Ariel and Kafir, are dead. And they haven't really said how they died. Obviously, it's considering that they kidnapped them in Gaza, then I would like to call it, if they have, obviously, it's murder. Having said that, Hamas reported this, and they said they will be releasing their bodies on Thursday. There haven't been any confirmation yet, obviously, in terms of any sort of evidence of this. The IDF have not been able to conclude that outcome. There's a lot of people in Israel still have hope that this could just be propaganda coming from Gaza. They have some sort of tactic or whatever. But the mainstream media have been basically reporting this as a fact, which is quite interesting because, again, it goes back to everything else that the BBC and the likes of the BBC have been doing over the last year or so. Anything that comes out of Gaza, the BBC says, is factual. And this is a big problem. We will wait to get the confirmation. We will not become a propaganda mouthpiece like the mainstream media. But there is already some reaction to this, which we will give you guys, including, of course, the Bibas family in Israel, who have released this statement. During the last few hours, we have been on an emotional roller coaster after a Hamas spokesman published an announcement saying that our Shiri, Ariel and Kafir will be returned to Israel on Thursday within the framework of releasing fallen hostages. It is important for us to say we are aware of these reports, but are yet to receive any official update on the matter. Until we receive certainty on the matter, our fight is not over. We ask for the press and the public to respect our privacy during the difficult days that we are facing and refrain from contacting us on the matter. And I do hope that the media have actually respected this wish instead of keep calling them or trying to get sort of more statements from them. They've already released this statement. Leave them alone. They have their own problems. Now, there was also the statement coming from the hostages and obviously missing people's forum, saying that the hostages and missing families forum welcomes with profound joy the return of Elia Cohen, Tal Shoam, Omer Shemvutov, Omar Wenkratz, Hisham Al-Said and Avera Mengistu this Saturday. The forum did say this in the statement, but they also said, while we feel profound relief at their homecoming, we are devastated by the news that the remains of 4 of our loved ones will be returned this Thursday. So, again, the Islamists in Gaza have been trying to play mind games, especially recently over the last few weeks. And you may make the argument that they have been winning tiny battles, because when President Trump gave the green light to the Prime Minister in Israel, saying last Saturday, deadline, if they don't release all the hostages, feel free to go back in. And the Prime Minister in Israel said, sure, we'll do it. On Saturday, Friday night, Islamists in Gaza said, don't worry, we are going to release the hostages. How many? Just a few of them, just about 3. And the Prime Minister in Israel said, okay, cool. That condones bad behavior, that sends a bad message, and of course, they're going to play with you once again. We do not know what's exactly happened right now in Gaza, especially when it comes to Bibas family. Unfortunately, a lot of people will not be surprised. about this update. But let's not forget that these guys in Gaza think that they have the upper hand. They've been going around celebrating on the streets. They're wearing their uniforms, official uniforms, because they are so confident now because of the ceasefire. But more is happening. What is actually going on in Gaza? Well, Egypt are getting involved. They obviously want to interfere because they say we want to protect our interests. So they've decided to send their forces now into Gaza. So Egyptian forces have now entered Gaza through the Kerem Shalom crossing. And with the help of the mediators, all the issues around the humanitarian aid, all the issues around the border security in Egypt, and everything else around the southern parts of Gaza is becoming more of a playground for certain governments like Egypt. Now, what is actually happening here? We know that behind closed doors, the so-called mediators, including the state of Qatar, have their own interests. They are not impartial mediators. Egypt are not impartial mediators, or anybody else that gets involved. These people are not impartial. Everybody has their own interests. That's why if you're going to get a number of countries to do mediating, you have to make sure you have people from different sides who actually have different interests, not the same side. It's complete lunacy what's been going on over the last year or so. But again, going back to the situation inside Gaza themselves, spokesperson came out to say, on Saturday we will witness a major achievement for the Palestinian people with the release of prisoners serving life and long sentences. For the record, when he says prisoners, he's talking about actual terrorists who are in Israel. Hamas is fully prepared, both politically and military, to implement the second and third phases of the agreement. Wow. Shameless, right? We are ready for a one-time prisoner exchange in the second phase, provided it leads to a permanent ceasefire and a full Israeli withdrawal from Gaza. The number of prisoners being released was doubled at the request of mediators, proving our commitment to the agreement demanded by the mediators. This is why the mediators are not impartial. Now, they continue to say this, by the way, that, yeah, second phase and third phase, and obviously Israel will do a permanent ceasefire and withdraw. Even though the official line from the Israeli government so far has been, we are not going to withdraw, we're going to come back and finish the job. A lot of people have been saying, yes, obviously that's what's going to happen. Netanyahu is going to come back and do it. But when you look at some of the policy decisions coming from the Prime Minister in Israel and his government, concessions, more compromising. Do not be surprised if we actually get to the second phase, because they're going to start negotiations now, and somehow we get to the third phase, and somehow Israel and the IDF decide, yes, actually, let's do a permanent ceasefire. I know it sounds weird right now, because no, the IDF, the Israeli government have been quite clear. They're going to finish the job. They also said Saturday, if Gaza that don't release all the hostages, they're going to go back in. So, if this statement from Hamas was released a year ago, that, oh yeah, of course, we are ready for a permanent ceasefire and Israel will do a permanent ceasefire. Everybody was like, haha, Hamas is talking nonsense. Obviously, Israel's not going to do it. Now, a lot of people are terrified, saying, will Netanyahu make another compromise? Will he find a way to say, yeah, permanent ceasefire? Whatever that means, by the way. Permanent ceasefire. Now, he also finished by saying Israel's demand to remove Hamas from Gaza is laughable. A mere psychological tactic. The resistance will not leave. And the disarmament is out of the question. Any future arrangements for Gaza will be decided through a national consensus. Okay. Now, a lot of people, as I said, are hoping that the government in Israel are still focusing on the main objective. There is a reaction from the Prime Minister. He's saying, Netanyahu says, Hamas and the Palestinian Authority will not rule Gaza after the war, even though reports obviously said that Hamas agreed to let the Palestinian Authority to take over, which is the first time in a very long time, getting Hamas to actually say, yes, let's get Mahmoud Abbas and his minions to come and take over Gaza. They're trying to come across as they are the ones making some sort of compromise and obviously concessions, right? If Netanyahu's line is still that, no, Hamas need to be destroyed. And Hamas at the same time are saying, no, Israel will withdraw, we will stay in Gaza. And both publicly are still agreeing with the phase 1 and now potentially phase 2 of this so-called ceasefire. At some point, there is going to be a massive clash, an implosion. Or one side is going to be surrendering. Hamas is not going to surrender. They are ideological. They're not going to surrender in terms of during the negotiations. They're not going to diplomatically surrender. Will Israel surrender diplomatically? Will they somehow agree to do what Hamas are basically creating as a propaganda? They keep saying, yes, of course, Israel will withdraw. They're saying it and they're repeating it. It's like faking it till you make it. They keep saying it until it becomes a reality. Delusions. Now, one of the terrorists, the Islamists, this is Nal Barghouti, he's also expected to be released. Now, for the record, he's one of the longest serving prisoners in Israel, having started his 45th year of imprisonment in 2025. Now, obviously, he's been in jail for a long time, right? What sort of message does it send to future terrorists? You've seen the images from Gaza. They are already, again, brainwashing kids. They are putting them in Hamas uniforms, making them walk around with guns and everything else. You have to deal with them now in the future, unless you sort the whole situation out in Gaza. Otherwise, you're going to have the same schools being rebuilt, the same type of people, the same type of education will be taught. Now, the problem we have is the Iranian regime. The Islamic Republic continue to bark like a crazy dog. Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader, says, the method being used by the resistance for the release of Zionist captives is demonstrating the magnificence of the resistance before the eyes of the world. They're taunting us. They are literally taunting the West and the Israelis, both Hamas and the Islamic Republic. They continue to go with the same propaganda. Oh yes, look at us. We are so smart. We are so clever. We continue to force the Israelis to make compromises. Look at us. How long can they continue this? That's the question. Now, meanwhile, we talked about the situation in the southern parts of Gaza, around the border with Egypt. The Egyptians are in. Around the eastern side of Israel, the border with Syria, there was a bit of activity, in case you didn't know. The Israeli Air Force jets, guided by Division 210, struck old Syrian regime weapons. This is in Gaza, in the southern parts of Syria. Let's go to the video. Now, it's been a while since we've seen this sort of footage. It's definitely been at least a few weeks or a couple of months, but activities continue in the region. The idea that the IDF had with this and sending the Israeli Air Force jets was to eliminate any possible threat. Now, the new regime in Syria have claimed that those tanks and things that were the equipment were not actually being used by the new regime. They were just there because of the civil war in Syria. They belong to the old regime, the Assad regime. So, but the Israelis were like, well, we're not going to take any chances. We're not going to go any gamble. We're just going to destroy them anyway. They're right by the border. It's not safe. Move them or they're going to go. They didn't move them. They destroyed them, which is fair enough. Now, going back to the main point of the whole situation, we have this man, Hisham al-Sayed, an Israeli who actually has mental illness. He's been held since 2015 in Gaza, in case you didn't know. Because he wandered into Gaza, despite being a civilian. He was actually exempt from military service. This was reported by open source intel. Hamas falsely claimed that he is an IDF soldier. Now, Israel have managed to also secure his release this Saturday, but in exchange for around 100 Palestinian terrorists being released. Yeah. So, just as a reminder, everything you've seen since 2023 There's nothing new. And there have been many other innocent people who've been victims for years and years, including that man and many others. Now, the only good news we have for this is, again, Tal, Elia, Hisham, Omar, Avra, and another Omar have now been confirmed that they will be released this Thursday. Of course, good news for their families and their friends and their loved ones, but there's still a lot of questions that have not been answered by all the parties involved in this, including the so-called international community. Anyway, let's get some reaction from the live chats. I say thank you very much for your super chat, saying not 2-year-old and not 5-year-old, 9 months and 3-year-old. They didn't get to grow older before being killed. Muslims doing what Muhammad did. And Aaron says, when will they say all bets are off? Open fire. I don't know. It's been what I've been asking this for the last few hours. The cult followers of Muhammad have killed 270 million people in 1,400 years. That's 528 people per day and 22 people an hour. Stu says, are Hamas elected leaders or resistance? Can't be both. They are a bit of a hybrid, if you ask the supporters of Hamas in Gaza, because they're both in a democratically elected government. And then when it doesn't suit them, the supporters of Hamas in the West say, yeah, well, no, the majority of people doesn't mean everybody in Gaza is pro-Hamas, right? So they say they're all civilians. But then in another debate, they say, no, well, the Hamas were democratically elected. They have a mandate. The majority of Gazans support them. And then they say, while they are a democratically elected government, they are also the resistance. How does that work? So are they terrorists or not? Make up your mind. And I'm not just talking about Hamas. I'm talking about people in Gaza. You can't just say at the same time both they're all innocent civilians and they're all supporting Hamas. Felicity says, Israel are not concerned with popular opinion. God bless Israel. You say that. We've had prime ministers after prime ministers making concessions. So many concessions over the last few decades. Mostly since the 1970s onwards. And, even the 60s, but actually, to be fair, after Golda Meir, things changed. And yes, we've had some robust prime ministers, but primarily you've had concessions after concessions from the Israeli government. We had the map in 1948. Sort it out. Go back to it. Mr. Ross, the popular opinion is manufactured by the scummy mainstream media like the BBC and co. It's the same thing when we say about opinion polls. Opinion polls are not there to reflect the public opinion. Opinion polls are there to shape the public opinion and make you think the way they want you to think. There's another comment saying, I think if this news about the Bibas family is true, it will kick up the hornet's nest. And we are on the brink of war. God bless. God help us. Well, it really depends how robust the Israeli government actually is. Because they have a lot of problems, internally especially. And even last week, a couple of weeks ago, when we had the latest round of hostages, both of the 3 guys who were released, and they were very, very thin and skinny, and they didn't look well. A lot of people expected a complete backlash. Now, there were some statements, harsh statements, from Prime Minister Netanyahu, but that's it. Not much changed. Scott says, Trump said if hostages are released in dribs and drabs, still all hell will be let loose. Has he got a master plan? I wonder. It's not up to the president. That's the point. President Trump. President Trump said last week, when Hamas said, they violated the ceasefire deal. For the record, if you violate the ceasefire deal, Israel should have just said, that's it. It's broken. Goodbye. We're coming back in. Not only they didn't do that, but the president, the Donald, said, you can do whatever you want. I will give you the green light, baby. Just do it. Saturday, all hell breaks loose, right? It's not that Trump is going to do it. Trump gave the green light. He said, I'll have your back. The Americans are not getting involved directly, at least not yet. It was up to Netanyahu to do it. He didn't. And now, same thing. Everybody continues to say, well, no, but Netanyahu has a master plan. Well, we've been waiting for the master plan for some time now. And for the record, this is not some sort of anti-Netanyahu thing, because he and his government, and under his leadership, there have been massive victories over the last couple of years. Look at what's happened to Hezbollah in Lebanon. Look at what's happened to Hamas in Gaza in general. Look at what's happened to the IRGC proxies. Look at what happened with the whole PagerGate. I mean, even allegedly, the helicopter situation, allegedly, obviously we don't know, right? And the assassination of the Hamas leader in Tehran. Netanyahu's government and the IDF have made massive wins. So it's not that they've been incompetent or they've been losing. They haven't been losing. This is simply to say, remain robust. They go with the win-win-win, and they make compromises, and then win-win-win, big compromises again. Keeps happening. And I'm not talking about 2023 and now. Again, I'm talking about 1970s until now. Especially in 2000s and the 90s as well. Badass Kitchen says, hold the United Nations responsible. How did this happen under their watch? And also hold the International Cricket Council responsible as well. So first things first, I mean, going focusing on the UN part. They were involved. How much evidence do we need to prove that the UN RWA were involved on the 7th of October? And they got away with it massively because they are so bureaucratic as an organization, the United Nations, just like the European Union. So if something happens inside the organization, they could just throw people under the bus saying, well, that wasn't us. You know, we had some people infiltrating. You know, we've learned from mistakes. This is the problem with... It's actually a good thing that we have a rule-based society as opposed to one figure dictating. Overall, I'm talking about the world order. We have a rule-based system. The problem with the rule-based system is that bad people can still misuse it. Bad people have infiltrated all these organizations, from the United Nations to the European Union and many others, the World Health Organization, which means they are playing the system. They are doing their bad things. When it gets caught, they throw other people under the bus and they continue. Back then, you had to have like a tyrant, like a villain, dictator, like controlling things. And then when they get caught, you bring them down or you die. So we have the rule-based system, but people hide behind it. Faceless bureaucracy and this and that, charities, human rights groups, Amnesty International nonsense. Heather, super chat, thank you, Heather, saying being blocked from posting even tame. So Hamas is in charge of this now. I keep getting edit to publish it. Well, we can see this comment, so thank you for that, Heather. It has been published. Egypt, I am worried. I am as worried about Egypt as people would be about North Koreans. Come on, man. They can barely drive those vehicles. Is that English? I'm confused about this. I can't read that, unfortunately. Lyndon says, regarding the media, we need variety, such as we have. The BBC are good. And I would hate Newspeak, where no independent views are allowed. What? Did you say the BBC are good? Okay. Cliff says, is Maya Pakistani? Do I look like a Pakistani? What? You can check the name. The good thing about me and my identity is that I have a very specific name. It's a very unique name. Both my first name and my last name. So when you Google or ChatGPT it, is that a verb? ChatGPT it, you can find out the origins of both the first name and the last name. And there's only one place on this planet that this name and this face belongs to in terms of the origin. And no, it's not fake countries like Pakistan, because it's not a real country. All right. Thinks it's the BBC of Hamas. Yeah, you could say that. Well, they're doing sympathizing. They continue to refuse to call them terrorist organization. Marshall replied to Cliff, "Are you? Maybe. No, it might be Indian." Someone said, at first I thought Maya was Indian. Does Maya sound like an Indian name? Although big shout out to all our lovely Indian viewers watching this as well. This says Maya is British and Persian. Yes, obviously ethnically I'm Persian, nationality British. I could never be Anglo-Saxon, as you can see. I save so much money on fake tan spray thing. 2C's Italian. Nope, not the Romans. Anyway, Chris, it's funny how all that evil comes from Muslims. I mean, it's the ideology of Islam that's been producing the same thing since the 7th century. There's nothing new about it. All right. Lisa says you can tell a left-wing liberal that they think Hamas is a single person. I have actually quite enjoyed over the last couple of years all these videos that a lot of people did, especially even in the West, in America, where they've been going around university campuses, because all our university campuses have been taken over by Islamists and Marxists. And then if you wonder where they got the money for all the propaganda, it comes mostly from the state of Qatar, the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Open Society, and the Soros family, and all these weirdos. And they don't know what they're doing. All these interviews have been going around university campuses asking these students who are passionate about the Palestinian cause, wearing the keffiyeh. They actually don't know what river and what sea. They genuinely, some of them are in a very naive way have been supporting it. And I'm not talking about the militant ones. They're just naive. Like, oh yeah, I've been told bad Jews. And then when they give them the facts about obviously the origins, the history of it, and how Gaza was not under occupation, Hamas was literally in charge, they get, oh, we didn't know. Do your own research. You're a student. What is going on? Decades ago, the whole point of universities was to produce people with intellectual capacity, or at least a level of skills to do research. These days, they expect to be told what to think by their lecturers and their teachers. That's the problem. So it says Anglo-Saxon. Anglo-Saxon. I know it's doom and gloomy, but this is just funny. For the record, that's Anglo-Saxon with a tan. Tanglo-Saxon. I now, going forward, self-identify as Tanglo-Saxon. I'm stealing this. Gonna do a trademark, copyright the whole thing. We're gonna do merchandise. Don't worry about it. Joe says, don't give a damn about what your ethnicity is. Keep up the excellent work. Appreciate your hard work. Thank you, Joe Boyd, for that support. Now, yes, but he's already signed the executive order. Trump defunding any university that is woke. It's about time for us to make the West great again. Ladies and gentlemen, this was the latest update on the hostages news. And of course, we have a couple of days to find out what's exactly going on. Not just with the Bibas family, but everybody else as well. And any sort of reaction from the Israeli government over the next 2 days. Obviously, on this channel, we'll keep you guys posted as usual. I'm Maya TC, and we are the media.